What does it mean to be a woman of the league?
I think we're the backbone.
He called me and he's just like, I got traded. And I was like, wait, what?
My heart is racing. I feel like I need to protect him, you know, from other people sometimes.
My DMs get filled up with even like death threats. The good old word, prenup.
I'm glad you said it and not me.
Watching him follow his dreams, it made me want to like, okay, like I want to get my shit together.
What do you see your TikTok comments? You're having a baby right now.
We are like 5 words away from wrapping people.
Join us on the next episode. Hi, and welcome back to Women of the League. I'm your host, 𝐲𝐫𝐬𝙪, and with me here today, I have Whitney Reisner, Kim Jackson, Kristen Harper, and Allison Rochelle. Okay, ladies, last time we were here, we left it off talking about the instability that the NFL provides. And that instability has to bleed into really every aspect of your life. And one aspect is finances. So instability definitely, I imagine, plays a role in how you handle your finances and the decisions that you make financially. So are we ready to dive in?
I guess.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, one of the things that bothers me so much, I see all the time in the comment section, is how people view NFL wives, and they are constantly viewing NFL wives, generally, as gold diggers. So let's just put that out there. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I know I personally, it's a huge insult, and I know that Whitney deals with it a lot, like on TikTok, all those comments. It's frustrating when you're putting in so much hard work behind the scenes.
I feel like I totally relate to that. I think that's the number one like comment. It's not that I get it all the time, but I think it's goes unsaid a lot, or people just assume things about you. They assume that you don't have a job, or you're not doing anything outside of following your husband around or fiance around. And I think so many of the women that I know in the league are working hard at their careers, or they're doing amazing things like in the community. They're doing so much more than just chasing a bag. Like that's just not the reality. Like I haven't met any women that are doing that. Like it's not the norm, and I think it's something that's just been portrayed, and it's just not the truth.
And I think it's tough too, like taking pride in being an independent woman that has your own thing and does your own thing and works hard for your own money and works hard to, I'll get comments that are like, oh, using your husband's money to fly out and buy tickets. And it's like, no, that's actually so far from the truth. Like I buy my own flights, my own stuff to go out to his games.
At the end of the day though, even if I had zero income, and my husband did decide that he wanted to pay for everything that I needed to get paid for, what's the issue with that? Like, there really should be no issue, and I shouldn't have to be a gold digger if at the end of the day my husband has a job that allows him to provide for me, and he does, and I'm fine with that, and that's our relationship standards. I feel like, what's the issue with that, and why are people so upset about it is the thing, because I'm sure some of the same comments that assume that we're gold diggers would love to be in that position. So I think sometimes it comes from a place of dissatisfaction of like within your own self and stuff. So I just think that we should kind of shift the narrative to, even if I had nothing going for myself financially, he's my husband. If I want him to be my provider and he's fine with that, then let's just go along with that.
I think I'm kind of sick of the narrative that if you're a stay-at-home mom, that you don't have a job. Honestly, it's just like, okay, like try it for a day. And so take the NFL out of it. It's like I feel like so many people even like put down like mothers that stay at home, or if you're in a difficult situation where you're moving around all the time, like if your husband is serving in the military or in some other sector, it's like it's frowned upon. But I'm sorry, if there's a career that involves you moving around all the time, it's like, how hard is it to get a job and maintain that job if tomorrow you could be gone?
Well, also, once you add kids into the mix, that's a whole other element that you have to deal with. It is such a job moving around across the country and moving the kids and figuring out where they're going to go to school and all of the ins and outs that, people don't really think about. And to your point, Kim, like, you're right. It is, one, it's nobody's business, and two, that narrative's gotta get thrown out the door. But even if you never made a single dollar, like you as a new mom, you're working a lot of jobs.
Right.
A lot of jobs.
Right.
24/7.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think like there was a TikTok video where some lady was like writing down the amount of like hours that she like worked with her kids and like doing the house and stuff. And it was like crazy. Like she was working like 3 full-time jobs. So like there's just so much that goes into it to where it's just like, I don't think that, one, like you said, all women should be able to stay at home and do whatever feeds their relationship and they're fine with. But even just in our situation, I feel like it's really looked at when we are blessed to have men that just happen to make decent money in this world. We're just automatically gold digger. And it's like, would you have that same degree of judgment for someone else? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But also the same degree if the roles were reversed.
Right.
I mean, after football, if I'm still working and my husband decides to retire and be a stay-at-home dad, it's like, are you going to have the same regard? And so it's so frustrating because it's like, just because of our genders, it's now so frowned upon.
Right.
But when you see on social media a man being a stay-at-home boyfriend or a stay-at-home husband, a stay-at-home dad, it's like, oh, like, what a king.
Right,
and it's so frustrating because it's like, why are we so obsessed with like everybody else's life? And it's like, you know, in a marriage, it's like, I feel like that's a private decision. Like, whether I have a job or not, like, doesn't make me any less of a human being. Like,
exactly.
And to your point, once if a man is staying home and the woman is, you know, going out and working the 9 to 5 or whatever, making the money, all of a sudden she's a sugar mama, right? And she's like, oh, now you got a sugar mama, and it's cute, it's cute and it's funny. But if it's a roles reversed, now you're a gold digger.
Yeah, it's kind of, I spoke on that earlier about that video that went kind of viral, and the comments on it that were basically saying that I wasn't supportive and I wasn't there for him. And when I was doing my own career and doing something that I was really passionate about and I was earning my own money, but then on the reverse of that, if I'm following him around, I get the gold digger comments. But no one in the comments is like, well, why isn't Jared at your photo shoot supporting you? Like, you know, it's like, why wasn't that a single comment? Like, everybody expects me to be there, but nobody expects him to be there. And it's kind of the roles reversal thing.
Do you think that because Jared is an NFL quarterback, that in people's minds that his job just takes priority over yours?
100%. I mean, I think the number one thing I think people assume is like that I won't work because of him, and they're not even considering like maybe I like to, or maybe that's something that moves me, and maybe it's something that doesn't move me, but it's at the end of the day, it's my choice. But I think, his people just automatically assume, I think you spoke on this earlier, like if Isaac introduces himself to someone and says that he's an NFL, athlete, they don't even ask you what your job is because they assume you just don't work.
Yeah, after she said that, I was like, wait.
Yeah, nobody was asking
people
me.
ask Jeffrey what he does all the time, and I've never been asked. No one ever says, like, what do you do? Besides, like, if I'm alone sometimes. But yeah, when you're with them, you're really disregarded for the most part.
Has your financial status, as you guys have mentioned several times, throughout our conversations, like, you have been blessed financially. That's something that we can acknowledge and we have a lot of gratitude for. But has it affected your relationships with your friends and your family at all?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard when you're, like, in not many careers is the amount of money you're making is publicized.
Yeah.
And so I think
Literally on Google.
Literally, you can Google it. So I think that's what gets a little complicated, and I have friends in the league that have really struggled with, friends and family like asking for money, and it's really hard to be put in a position where, of course, you want to help your friends and family, but it's also, these guys have a limited amount of time they might be playing, and they're trying to stretch this money over the rest of their lives, and they don't know tomorrow it could be cut short. And so I think I have had friends with that really have struggled in that space, and it's really hard to navigate because you want to help everybody you can, but it's also like you also have to help yourself.
Also, it's like sometimes a place of awkwardness, and I haven't dealt with this personally, which is, great, but I've seen it happen. But I feel like also as a wife, fiance, girlfriend, it's like sometimes you feel like you want to protect your significant other. Yeah. And so putting yourself in between like your husband and family, that can be extremely difficult. And it's like you have to be a protector of money, but it's not like you're not the one on the field, so it's a very awkward situation, I feel like. Have you guys dealt with that?
There's been little situations, and Jeffrey is also a very, very, he's just so selfless, and he will, give his last. He'll give you the shirt off his back if he could. I don't know why that's going to make me tear up, but Just give me a second. So it's just tough because I feel like I need to protect him, you know, from other people sometimes because he just wants to help everyone. Just a second.
You're making everybody cry.
Like, it's just hard to be on the defense when you are naturally already like a giving person and you are already naturally selfless. And it's just like you have to kind of put that guard up and make sure like, okay, let me make sure I'm not being taken advantage of, or like that you're kind of not smiling in my face because you know what I bring to the table or what I can possibly offer you and stuff. So yeah, it's just a tough little spot to be in, to just kind of know that, like you said, our money's kind of on display. And even if, like you said, the Google number is not always correct.
Right,
Let's talk about that.
yeah.
The Google number is so inflated. Let's talk about taxes and just what's guaranteed and what's not.
You know, a $30,000 fine every year.
Right. So it's just like people have these expectations and they see the Google number and they think like, oh, that Google number is in their bank account right now.
We all know that at this table there's a $100 million discrepancy in terms of pay grade, right? And I think that also is reflective of your team. There are some people on the team that are on multi-million-dollar contracts, and then there's other people on the team and they're making league minimum.
Or practice squad.
Or practice squad, exactly. There's a huge discrepancy in that. I think, you know, a lot of people don't think about that when they think about the NFL, but for you guys personally, where you land on that pay grade, does it dictate who you hang out with and what you do in any way?
I can say honestly, coming in as a 20-year-old, when I first started dating Dalton, I felt like the weight of the world of like, you know, I don't fit in, this, you know, I'm in college, like I'm a college kid, you know, this just like isn't like, I just don't feel like I belong, you know, but I think also with like finding your identity and finding, you know, like who you are, I don't think any of that should ever define you or make you feel less of. But I know it can be human to do that because I personally did that when I first came in. But I think it's funny like how I found myself over the years and like how like I find confidence in not doing that stuff now. You know what I mean? Like I find confidence in just like being me, being who I am as a person, coming from humble roots, humble backgrounds, and like I enjoy doing those things, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not embarrassing anymore. I'm like proud of the things that I continue to do because that's who I am.
In some regard, I don't think it matters as far as like just being able to talk, have conversation, and be a friend. I feel like if you're just a kind-hearted person and you're able to just get along with people and stuff like that, it really shouldn't be an issue. And I feel like that goes across for any career, whether or not you're a teacher or and teachers should be paid more. Whether or not you're a teacher or you're the best neurosurgeon in the world, you know what I mean? Like you should both be able to have a conversation and hang out and be fine. But as far as just maybe activities that are done or things like that, sometimes that can cause an indirect divide if there are some women where taking a private jet to one of the games is feasible, then they may be hanging out more because they're on the private jet together and they went to that game together. That's not to say that they don't hang out with the other women or there's any beef with the other women, but sometimes just that's out of, I'm not gonna take the private jet, I'm going to be on a regular flight. So that doesn't mean that we have an issue with each other, but just we may not be as close because we don't share that experience. Yeah. So I think that's the only kind of pay discrepancy that I've noticed. But I don't feel like it comes from just being able to talk and be friends.
Is that something that happened to you personally?
Yeah. Some girls do take private jets every once in a while, and I will be not on that private jet.
Okay. So on that note, I mean, knowing that you have to spread this money out for hopefully a lifetime or at least a really long time, I mean, you must have people in place that are helping you figure out how to make that happen and make sound financial decisions.
We're super grateful to have an amazing financial advisor where we're able to talk about different sorts of things that we want to invest in. And I think that's important too, because now we are married and we are a team. It's like important to have people on your husband's team that also view you as now part of it. I mean, I've heard of like financial advisors, you just need his signature if you're going to spend money. And I think that can be like in and of itself kind of its own issue, but financial advisors are super important, and I think it's a huge like misconception that all these guys are going to have no money when they're done. Yeah. It's like actually the amount of men that like have to go and get careers, I mean, given like their contract length, but a lot of men have financial advisors because now like the NFLPA has so many conversations because you hear these horror stories about men not having money in 5 years. And so I think that the NFLPA has done a great job of like bringing that awareness and setting up, here are some financial advisors that we recommend, or here are some different points of contact. So I feel like even the NFLPA is like a source of support and somebody else on your team.
So is that team that you guys are talking about that you have surrounding you, are they also advising you on how to protect your money going into a marriage? I mean, I know, Whitney, you just got married, so I'm sure there's so many conversations leading up to a marriage, and finances is a really uncomfortable one. I'll come out and say like that was a very, very hard thing that I dealt with before I got married. Those financial conversations were tough, to say the least. So is that team that you have around you, are they also advising you how you protect that money in your marriage as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think just talking on like the team, so agents, financial advisors, like that's their job.
Yeah.
They come in and they represent these guys. It is their job to, talk to the guys and tell them like what they suggest, or, like what people do.
Yeah.
But I still think it's cool that like, even though you have this team hired, like ultimately it's your guys' decision, it's your marriage, it's your money. You guys are half of each other, you're one, you're whole. So it's cool to have these people in place that, like they can recommend things. They can tell you like, hey, this is, this would be smart, or that would be smart. But like ultimately the decision is up to you guys, which I think is cool as a team and like partners to be able to make those decisions.
And what did those conversations look like with you and Dalton before you got married?
Yeah, so the good old word prenup.
I'm glad you said it.
I know, I'm like, am I gonna tiptoe around it, or am I just gonna say the word? As a team, that's their job to suggest and bring that up, but I respect my husband, and I think that he's the leader of the household, and his decision, I respect whatever he decides to make. And, his decision was to become one with me, and, not to have stipulation, not to have, make a decision like that. And so I respected his decision regardless of what it would have been.
Prenups, everybody thinks it's only about them, like, yes, money is a reason you sign like these prenuptial agreements, but also I think an important conversation Isaac and I had when we were getting married is that when Isaac is 60 and all of a sudden he has all these health issues from football and we're divorced, we're not ever getting divorced. but you have, it's crazy because you have to pretend that like you're not a couple in love and actually think about like when people discuss prenups, it's like, oh my God, I'm not here to take your money. Like, I love you. Like, what? Like, why do you think we're gonna get divorced? But after talking with our financial advisor, he's like, I'm just giving the information, and it does make you think like, okay, yeah, that is to protect. Like, if he is to be in the future and has all these issues and like with his body, it can make you come from a more understanding perspective. Yeah.
At the end of the day, a contract is going to be written, and it's either by the state or you design what it looks like, and that's really what it is. So whether you like the one that the state gives you or you need to rewrite it so it works for you, protects yourself, like I think a lot of women don't realize is you can write something that is protecting you and giving you what you need. Yeah. And I think for everyone, like it's something to consider, and I think it's people like walk around it, but I also see why you wouldn't want to do it, and like maybe that's like putting divorce into the air or something like that. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like everybody needs to do what they feel is best.
Absolutely.
And
it's whatever works best for you and your husband.
The way that you both talk about prenups is so rational and logical, and I feel like when we talk about finances and when we make these financial decisions, sometimes it's really emotional. So how did you guys get to the point where you could kind of take that out of the conversation and be rational about it?
I mean, I think for me, we also are still kind of like, we haven't really gotten there yet. We're still not married, but I think I'm not marrying the money. Like, when you're not marrying that, it seems like it's such a separate thing that it doesn't even matter. So it's like, it's just like a thing, like it's a side thing that we just have to figure out, but that has nothing to do with our relationship and our love for each other. Like that will never change if I mean, if he leaves me $1 or not, let's hope he doesn't do that. But like, I mean, it wouldn't change how I feel about him. I'd be like, that's not very nice. But it's not. It doesn't change. Like, I think that's the thing about the prenup is it's not supposed to be something that's scary. It's supposed to be like a conversation that actually is protecting you, and it's nice to have those conversations with your partner about what the future looks like, and like that might be something that can help.
And what do those conversations look like between you and Jared? Because you've obviously at least talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think I've also had a long career of making my own money, and so I also want to protect the money I've made too. And I think, we haven't really, like I said, we're still not there yet. But I think I'm so happy to work on something that's collaborative and protects both of us. And we'll never see that document because we're going to be together forever. But like, it's there in case. And I think whatever. I don't know.
But I think it's also too, people like hear the word prenup and it's like, oh, it's protecting one side. And I think that's like, it's so wrong. Like prenups can be written 50-50. Like it's, like you said, it's the legal documents in place to like make things not harder if something were to happen. So I feel like, that word, everyone's like tiptoeing around it. They're like, don't say it, you know? But it's like, it can be split down the middle, or it can be whatever benefits.
How did that conversation go between you and Jeff?
I was upset, and I was like, I don't really want a prenup, but I was like, why are you even putting that out there? Like, we're not gonna get divorced. Like, why do you even think that that's something that we have to prepare for? And I essentially kind of told him in that conversation that I feel like us having a prenup is kind of like us making it easier on us to divorce. And I didn't like that. I just was like, I feel like if we have a plan for how we're gonna divorce, it makes it easier to go into divorce. And I still kind of do stand on that a little bit. I do feel like us preparing for just the way our divorce would go does make it easier if we are having tough times versus if we were going through tough times and it's like, I don't want to deal with that, so let's fix this type of thing. So I'm kind of not really sure where I stand on the prenup, postnup thing, but obviously it has nothing to do with the money part of it. It more has to do with just where I kind of stand as far as our marriage and divorce goes.
And how did he take that?
He understood completely, and he was just more telling me like what his financial advisors and the NFLPA were telling him and stuff like that. And he definitely wasn't pushy about it. He was more just saying that like they brought up good points and that he wanted to have the conversation, which is just as valid, but there's no prenups.
I think it's unfortunately disappointing that for a woman of the league, there's nobody as a sounding board for women.
Right.
And that they have all of these people at their disposal to ask questions, to give them and prepare them, but nobody's there to inform us.
Not at all.
And so I think that needs to change moving forward.
Yeah. I never even thought about that, but we really don't have the same support.
Yeah.
Well,
not that we're the players, but.
No, but we're going through, things as well, and I think even as far as just like job opportunities and other things that could help us transition easier too, there's just really no thought into that, and hopefully that changes in the future, and hopefully by having these conversations that helps propel that forward.
Well, and also I had a girlfriend that I'd never like thought of prenups like this, but she brought like a really interesting like viewpoint to it. So I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but like after you're married, that's when it's community, right? Everything's together when you become one.
It'll depend where you are married, so your state law comes into effect if you don't sign a prenup. So it just depends.
Yeah. So
in California, yes.
She was talking to me and she's like, my husband approached me about, or soon-to-be husband approached me about a prenup, and she's like, he was saying like, we could do splits, so like 40-60, and she was like, like me being like her talking to me, she was like, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so like in this, we're married, but do you think I only bring 40% to the table? And like that like kind of opened my eyes to it. I'm like, even though there is a stereotype, like you are becoming one, and because he is the provider and she is the stay-at-home mom, like it kind of does put into perspective, like, oh wow, like, if we're putting on this contract, like, do I only bring 40%? Like, you know what I mean? Like, put aside money, like, the idea of it, like, do you only think I bring 40% to the table with all I do for you too? So it's kind of an interesting viewpoint, and I feel like that kind of honestly made me look at prenups differently too. I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. Like, for people that do stay at home with their kids and do raise, kids over the years.
yeah, that's really hard. I think that's a very difficult way to go about a prenup. But thank you guys for being so open about that. That's like a really hard conversation to have. And as you've been saying this entire time, like, oh my God, Isaac's gonna see this and be like, oh, Allison, Matt's gonna see this and be like, why were you such a psychopath? And all of these people were so normal and like rational, and my head swiveled and like steam came out of my eyes. So it was, I did not handle it in the way that y'all handled it. So definitely props to you guys. But anywho, I think that the way that you guys grow up and like the families that you are raised in have such an impact in who you are, and that also bleeds into finances. So with you, did you and your husband come from varying financial backgrounds?
I know for me and Isaac, we definitely did. I grew up going to private school and going on vacation twice a year. I grew up in a place of extreme privilege. Isaac grew up in a place where he had food on the table. His parents loved them to death, and they worked so extremely hard. His mom is a teacher, and his dad drives semi-trucks, and his dad would drive all the way to Alaska and back just to put his kids, it makes me emotional, all the way in, God damn.
One person cries and then like everybody cries.
Chills went like head to toe.
Right.
But his dad drove to Alaska and back to put him through private school so that he could get a good education. And that's how I think my husband was raised, and why I think he's so frugal about money, and why the hard conversations about prenups, I think it's a more understanding, because he didn't come from a place that I came from, and so money is viewed differently.
Yeah.
God, I love his dad. But it can be interesting when you enter a marriage, because my family might have done things differently than his family, but the beauty of it is that when you come together in a loving marriage with your best friend, you're able to have those conversations and to find a healthy balance so that moving forward you can have the best life possible and for your kids.
Dalton has a similar upbringing too, you know, like he does a lot of public speaking, and he talks about like when he was younger, getting Christmas presents dropped off at his house. You know, there was 5 boys, and his mom stayed home and watched all the kids, and his dad worked really hard to provide for their family. And so it's really cool to see Dalton like have a passion to give back, because he knows what it's like to be, you know what I mean, to have like to not have much, you know. And yeah, both of us coming from small towns and humble backgrounds, I think it's definitely makes us grateful for what we have and the opportunities we have now.
Sometimes you guys are faced with big financial decisions. They're big ticket items or just a big expense. So how do you guys handle those big decisions? What do those conversations look like? And are you involved in them?
I think we honestly talk about most purchases, even if they are like kind of low, unless it's a surprise. Even if I see a jacket that I really want or some shoes that I really want and they're $200, I'll still be like, do you think this is worth it? Even though I'm not saying that $200 is like something cheap, but I feel like just having those conversations, you're not necessarily asking for permission to spend the money. You're just bouncing it off of them because they're your partner, and you just want to know what they think and stuff like that. And sometimes if it's something small enough, he'll be like, I don't care what you think, I'm getting it anyways. And I'm like, okay, I thought it was ugly, but whatever. But like, it's just, I feel like it's good to just always have that open line of communication, so there's never like you went shopping today and didn't say anything, and maybe have a little bit of resentment or feel some type of way and just like let it slide, and then it keeps happening. I think just keep those lines of communication open. It's harder to run into problems.
Big ticket item that I've made in the past year was a car. I drove the same car from when I was 16 all the way up until I bought a car last year. And that was definitely a conversation that we had over a few months. Like having those conversations, and sometimes they're longer. I mean, some of our big ticket items are houses. We really genuinely love to like have houses in different areas, and I mean, it's investment, but it's also fun for us. So like having those conversations take a lot longer, but they're definitely made as a team.
Has there ever been a situation where they weren't made as a team?
When Isaac and I first got engaged, he decided to buy half of his brother's house in Colorado, And right off the bat, I was like, oh, like that doesn't really involve me. Like, where does that investment go? Like, but what if we want to buy a house? How does that affect us buying a house? And will that, make that process a little bit longer? So that was like, right off the bat, a hard conversation to have, because you're like, okay, you're buying like half of this house. Like, what does that mean? But also, if you look at it as like, oh, like we're going to be together, like it'll be like part of our portfolio, then I feel like some of these situations that people think are so negative, it's like if you look at it from like a loving perspective, it's not negative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you guys feel, especially with you, Kristen, and because you met Jared a little later, was there kind of like a transition period that you think you guys or maybe your husbands had to go through where they had to switch from this is my money to this is our money?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of you guys have been with your men for a lot longer than we were. Like, he was already in the NFL when I dated him, so I'm sure there was a bit of a transition. I mean, for the beginning part of our relationship, it was fully separate. We would switch off with paying things. Like, he mostly paid for everything, but I would, get the coffee or the ice cream and stuff. But I think, yeah, there was a but he was so generous, and he before I wanted to, he really wanted to bring me in and let him, take care of a lot more. And I still was a little proud in my, like, no, I got this, I'm independent. And it's really nice that he was the one that brought me in, because I would have never probably asked. So yeah. I think it's, the guys are in a tough position because they're, the ones making that amount of money. So It was nice that he was generous and,
And speaking about that, the guys are making a certain amount of money, and probably in a lot of instances it's more than what y'all are bringing to the table. Have you ever felt insecure about the fact that you may not be on the same page as your husband financially?
It was really tough for me when I first got out of college, and I mean, I'm making literally nothing, and I don't have a job, and I just have my degree in that little frame, and I'm just, trying to go into the world. It was a little intimidating just because I do really pride myself on being independent, and like, I have really high hopes for myself, and like, even when like in high school, I had like this class, and they're like, okay, like, build your dream life, and like, how much money do you need to support this lifestyle? And that was in what, like 2015, and I was like, okay, I wrote up my life, and they were like, okay, you need to make $15,000 a month, and I was like, oh my gosh.
You're like, I need to go back to the drawing board.
Right. So I was like, oh my goodness. So like, I always knew that like, I just wanted to live a privileged life, and I wanted to be able to afford those things, and it was never tied to a man, and if a man was going to help me do it, then fantastic, I'm never gonna turn that down. But I knew that even if they didn't, I was gonna figure that out on my own. So it was a little intimidating at first, just because I was like, oh my gosh, he's already there and I'm not there, and I just wanted to be able to be there. And it just kind of messes with you already don't really have your identity all the way, and you're just figuring out so much, and you just don't know who you are. And then you add to that feeling like you're kind of incomparable financially, and that's just a big part of our lives. Finances just kind of, they're just a huge part of our lives. They go into everything. So it was really tough for me to feel like I wasn't bringing much to the table financially. But at the end of the day, I just had to remind myself, like, Kim, like, you're good, and you know that you bring stuff to the table. You know that you're intelligent. You know that like you can go out there and you work hard. Like, I've had a job every single year since I was 14 years old. So it's like, you know that you're not afraid of hard work. So like, just forget about it and just like do your grind, and it'll come when it comes. And luckily it has begun to come. And I feel like, just like you said, I always told her, like, yeah, I'm gonna make more money than you. Like, I'll figure it out. Right. So I think it is hard at first, but you just have to continue to like have that faith in yourself and just trust that like, I have the capability to do it just as much as he does. His blessing just came a little earlier than mine did.
Yeah.
When we first moved to Detroit and I was still trying to decide what jobs to come home for to work, it was a conversation between us because the amount I would be making doesn't compare to what he's making. So it's like, he's like, well, why don't you just stay? You don't need to go and work, and you should just stay back and be, here. And it was one of those things where it still was important to me to go work, even though that money doesn't compare.
Right.
It still was important for me to go do those things for myself. And I had to kind of explain it to him. I'm like, I know it doesn't really make sense to you money-wise, but it's more of the principle of like getting it and doing something for yourself, just even if it's like not comparable.
We've talked so much this episode about finances, and you guys, there's just so much wisdom at this table. I mean, you have been through it, and you've come out the other side. What's the advice that you would give to other people as it relates to finances?
A dollar sign doesn't define you. No matter how much money you make, it doesn't define you.
I think like saving money. Like I have worked for so long, but I think the keeping up with the Joneses thing, I mean, with my career as a model, like it is like during that time, I think when I was starting out, I was making a lot of money and I wanted to like keep up with the other girls in the career, and I wanted to like buy the new purse or these things that you bring it home and it doesn't do anything for you. It sits on your shelf and you're like, why did I spend this money on this? Yeah. When I wish I could have in that time saved that money and let it grow, or just had it as a cushion just in case something happens for a rainy day. I think teaching young women to save their money is like so important and needs to be taught, because it doesn't, like, you don't need the new pair of jeans. I mean, I need to tell myself this. You don't need the new pair of jeans. You don't need the new shoe. Like, it's cool to rewear outfits. Like, I love rewearing the same thing. Like, you don't need to keep up with all these fashion trends all the time and do all these crazy things. Like, find things that you love and don't spend your money on disposable things that don't matter.
I think that's so important to hear that nowadays, because especially with social media, I mean, I even feel so much pressure scrolling through my Instagram or TikTok or whatever and being like, oh, I need this new trend and that new trend, and you know, it's...
And you can never keep up, because once you buy that, there's a new trend the next week and you're already behind again. So it's like, just throw your hands up in the air and just wear what you like and wear it a million times.
Or thinking, like you said, that bag is going, like once you get that bag or whatever, like it's gonna change everything. I'm gonna be fine. Like I'm gonna be fulfilled in this. It's in your closet and you're like,
yeah, and you're like,
that did nothing for me. Like, you know?
I feel like my advice would be to start slow. I feel like if you get a little bit of money and you start out the gate really fast, it's always, like we said, the next thing, and the next thing is probably going to be just a little bit more expensive, and it's easy to just like keep going, and like, for instance, I just feel like if you get out the gate and you treat yourself to a super expensive bag, then you're kind of desensitized to, now you make a little bit more, and now you get the next most expensive bag, and now you get the next one. So I feel like if you start slow, and I tell Jeffrey this with houses, for instance, we also invest, Allie, and we were like, okay, let's get a house, and we looked at our budget, and I was like, we decided let's start small so that we have another step and another step and another step, and even little things as far as like, yes, we're blessed financially, but let's not go get the dream home right now, because then you're gonna have another dream home after you get that dream home, you know what I mean? So let's start and get something small so that we continue to have things to work up to, and we're not at one point like just kind of living above our means, because that's the next thing to chase. So I just feel like if you just incrementally go very, very slow, you'll be in a much better position.
And you'll have more gratitude.
Right. You
appreciate
it a lot more than if you just jump 5 steps because you happen to get one big blessing. If you slowly do it, then you just build that stability, you build that foundation, you realize, you just know that you can handle it, you can handle that money, and you just continue to slowly go forward.
And also something that I've just picked up from listening to you guys tonight is, you know, it's okay to, and actually you are encouraging people to look outside of themselves and maybe their relationship to get help with your finances. You know, we talked a lot about having a team, a financial advisor, and seeking advice outside of yourself.
Right. And I mean, you need those things. I don't want people to see that like we're talking about like having a team of a financial advisor and feel like we're kind of being pretentious, you know what I mean? I feel like you should be mindful of the way you spend your money regardless as to how much you make. It's just really important, and like I said, money kind of is this, it's not the center, but it's a big part of everyone's life regardless as to how much you make. And I think it's just important to know how you're spending it and to just try to spend it well and do the best that you can for yourself. Obviously, I just doubt there's a lot of people that don't want a lot of money, you know what I mean? So it's just like, just do what you can to live the best with it, but just understand, like you said, it doesn't bring happiness, and it does solve a lot of problems, but it doesn't solve all of them regardless.
Yeah. So we've talked so much about how the NFL is fleeting and this life just isn't for long. So it's really important to find your identity outside of football. And honestly, I think this is something that so many people struggle with, identity. So we're gonna come back here and have that chat tomorrow. So join us on the next episode of Women of the League.